Hello everyone and welcome back to the FPL Family YouTube channel. I'm Sam and today we're going to be taking another look at some new signings. Now, one thing that is important to remember is, of course, the transfer window is open beyond the start of FPL and beyond the game week 1 deadline. And so we will of course have more new signings that come in over the course of the next few weeks, but today we're going to be taking a look at 4 more of the signings that have happened already, and we will try and get one more of these videos out depending upon what happens over the next couple of weeks in the build up to the 13th of August. But today we're going to start with probably the biggest signing of the summer so far, Jadon Sancho finally making his move to Manchester United. Now, this graphic you will have seen before in the Manchester United deep dive video. This graphic shows the stats from Sancho over the last 3 seasons in the Bundesliga. He made his Bundesliga debut in 2017, and over the course of his Bundesliga career got 50 goals in 137 appearances in all competitions. This shows us just the stats for the Bundesliga itself, but he was a phenomenal player over in the German Bundesliga, was used on both flanks for Dortmund, largely on the right hand side, but actually has and can be used on the left also. One of the things that I think as FPL managers and of course as Manchester United fans will love about Sancho in the Premier League is how creative he is, and the fact that he can score just as many points for creating chances as he will for finishing those chances himself. This guy has the potential to upset the FPL apple cart when it comes to the picks that we standard go to. Obviously, on the back of the last couple of seasons, Bruno Fernandes, Mo Salah, Harry Kane, they've become the names that are kind of ever present in our FPL teams, and we like to invest in them right from the get-go and hold them for the majority of the season. Sancho has the potential to be that man, to join that elite category of FPL players. The one thing we do have to be a little bit careful of course, is that the Premier League is a very, very different ballgame to the Premier League, and sometimes it takes players a little while to settle into the Premier League, and we've seen that on a number of occasions over recent seasons. Players have arrived in the Premier League with massive weights of expectation on their shoulders, and we just haven't seen them click in the early parts of the season. In particular, I'm thinking about Timo Werner last season, who was owned by over 50% of the game and just never really got into it from a Chelsea perspective. I think he will have a better season this time around as well. Now he is going into his 2nd Premier League season for Chelsea. But going back to Sancho then, he was ranked in the top 5 for Bundesliga players for both assists, chances created and big chances created, and even in that time missed 8 Bundesliga matches mostly through injury over the course of the last season. So to be in those 3 categories shows you how creative this guy can be. And I think in terms of Manchester United, he is the perfect fit for them. In the 2021 season, they had a massive bias towards chances coming in from their left-hand side. 41.8% of the chances that they created came down the left, with only 27.4% coming down the right. Now, you put Sancho down the right and you are kind of dealing with an issue that Manchester United have. You are levelling the playing field when it comes to where those chances are being created from. He also had 18 of his 67 chances from set pieces last time. Now, of course, we don't yet know what his roles and responsibilities will be for Manchester United. He also, of his goals last time out, got 8 of them. 8 of his goals, were from penalties. Now, I would not expect Sancho to be on penalties for Manchester United because surely that stays with Bruno. But it's handy to know that he can take a penalty if is needed, or if Bruno isn't for any reason on the pitch. Now, when we compare Sancho to his new Manchester United teammates, again, it is important to stress that, of course, it is very difficult to compare Sancho to the Premier League boys because the Bundesliga and the Premier League are incredibly different. This graph is courtesy of our friends at Fantasy Football Scout. There is an article over on their website all about Sancho, so if you haven't already read that, I suggest that you do that, and there is still 20% off memberships, link in the description below if you fancy signing up. So you can see here how Bruno and Sancho, as well as all of the other Manchester United key assets, compare to each other. So you can see Sancho along the top there, minutes per chance 39, which is significantly less than Bruno Fernandes. He is creating more chances more regularly, but again, we are talking about very different teams that he was playing for. So when Sancho arrives in this Manchester United side, we should hopefully see that number getting better. So in terms of the number of minutes that it takes him to get a chance coming down. We can also see there his minutes per shots in the box, which is better than Bruno Fernandes. We can see his minutes per chance created, which again is better than Bruno Fernandes. So there are different stages, and we need to really carefully think about whether we go with Sancho. For me, I'm just keeping a little bit of a lid on it, because I want to go into the season with Bruno knowing that if Sancho does prove to be what we all hope he will be from an FPL perspective, then there's easy to move between the two of them. And in fact, it's going to save me money to help me build the rest of my squad. But if I start the season with Sancho and not Bruno, that could cause me some issues in terms of if I need to move up to Bruno Fernandes from him if the season doesn't start as well as we are hoping. So that is just something to consider, but I definitely think there is potential, particularly in these opening 6 game weeks for Manchester United, for the double up or even maybe the treble up if you want to go with the defender also, because Luke Shaw is looking like a great option, as is the goalkeeper, if we trust what Ollie is saying that it's going to be Henderson over the course of next season, because at 5 million, that looks like a really nice bet. Of course, we also have the news that Rashford is out, and that may help Sancho's cause in terms of who is starting and where they are starting on the pitch. Game week 7 is a massive fixture swing as well for Manchester United, so that is something that we should be aware of, because we might not want to be invested quite as much as we do in this early part of the season when we get there, but it's perfect wildcard territory. So Jadon Sancho arriving at Manchester United finally could be the key to changing the platform for FPL when it comes to who is going straight into our teams. Just a word of caution though, they don't always start as well as we are expecting them to. Another new boy, this time in North London at Spurs, Bryan Gill, arriving from Sevilla. He has been part of their academy and has kind of built his way up. Has been away with Spain at the Olympics over the last few weeks, so hasn't yet joined up with his teammates in North London, and therefore, of course, unlikely, I would say, to start in game week 1. He was part of the Lamela swap deal, Lamela going to Sevilla, and Bryan arriving in North London, as well as Spurs paying out 25 million. So a substantial investment when you're talking about a player going the other way. He has played for the Spanish national side in World Cup qualifiers, and as I mentioned, he is or was currently at the Olympics with Spain. He made his debut for Sevilla in August 2019, followed by a number of little cameos throughout that season. He did feature quite prominently, though, in their Europa League group stages that season, and did indeed get a goal in that period. Since then, he's had 2 loan spells away from the club, and last season got 4 goals and 3 assists whilst out on loan. He has most regularly played, well, on both sides of the field. He can play left wing, he can play right wing, but if he plays normally, it's either the left wing or right inside the forward. So the good thing about that from an FPL perspective is there is plenty of opportunity for him to move around the pitch, and therefore less risk of rotation because he is multifaceted in terms of where he can play. 28 La Liga appearances in the 2021 season, and in that time he managed 1.4 shots, 1.8 key passes and 2.4 successful dribbles per game. Doesn't sound that brilliant when you look at the underlying stats, but if you compare that to his new Tottenham teammate, say Lucas Moura, returned 7 times in his 30 appearances, so Gil got 4 goals and 3 assists, so 7, so the same number of returns, but he did it in less games because Bryan had 21 to Lucas Moura's 30 appearances. Moura managed 0.6 shots per game, 0.5 key passes per game and 1.1 successful dribbles, so under half in all of those statistics for when you compare Gil and Moura. When you compare him to Steven Bergwijn, just 4 returns in 21 for him, so significantly less. 0.7 shots, 0.6 key passes and 1.0 successful dribble. So again, significantly better underlying stats than we see in his opposition in terms of the position that he's going to play in at Spurs. Nuno really likes playing out from the wide positions. We've seen him at Wolves playing with his wing backs. We've seen how important Dirty was in that period of time for him. And we've seen since he arrived at Spurs in pre-season friendlies and also in the training, Spurs have released a lot of footage of their training and held an open training session at the weekend. We've seen a lot of wingers and an importance of getting forward. And it does seem from what the Spurs players are playing that we aren't going to see a Nuno defensive, let's protect what we have counter-attacking style of play. Spurs do seem to be setting themselves up for a more attacking style of play this season. And if that continues, then with the likes of Reguilon and Doherty in those wing-back positions, that could make for some really interesting returns from those guys in front of him. And of course, on one side of the pitch, we have Son, who we all know what he can do from an FPL perspective. I'm expecting to see Bryan on the other side of the pitch. And if we have those two going at each other down each side, we should see much greater or much more improved stats from Spurs in that section of the pitch too. He is one maybe for the future, and he is definitely not one I would suggest investing in ahead of game week 1, because like I say, has only just recently returned from the Olympics, so don't think he's going to be available for at least the first couple of game weeks of the season, and even then, will he come straight in? Let's see. But he is definitely one to watch. The Spurs fixtures take a massive turn for the better. Between sort of game week 7 they start improving, and by game week 13 they're really nice. So he is maybe one for that slightly more later on in the season towards Christmas, where we might see something from Bryan that makes us invest, because at 6 million he's coming at a really, really nice price point. Now, one Premier League player that has gone on loan from Chelsea to Norwich is Billy Gilmour. Now, I've popped a picture up here of him in the aftermath of the England versus Scotland game, where he got man of the match and quite frankly was phenomenal in that game. Really deserved it. Now, this heat map that you can see on screen is from his appearances in the FA Cup in the 2021 season. He is going to be, in my view, the bargain enabler in that midfield category. He's in there with Basuma, but I think Billy Gilmour just offers a little bit more than Basuma does in terms of attacking potential. Hasn't scored a Premier League goal yet, but there is potential here. He's also brilliant bench fodder, because you know you're going to get some points out of him. As I mentioned, played against England in the Euros, got man of the match. Unfortunately for him then, went and contracted COVID, which ruled him out of the rest of the tournament for Scotland when they didn't progress. He is incredibly quick thinking as a player, agile on the ball, very, very happy to track back and press. And that is going to be so important for Norwich. This season for Norwich could be incredibly difficult. They've obviously already lost Buendia. There's a £40 million bid on the table for Cantwell, if we believe the press reports. If they lose both of those players, which they could very well do, they are going to need players like Gilmore to massively stand out. Now, of course, last season they had Ollie Skip playing in this kind of box-to-box position, and he was fantastic for them over the Championship season. In fact, he was voted 3rd in their Player of the Season vote by the fans last season. Now, he's gone back to Spurs, and instead they've taken Gilmour out on loan. He has, and when I was reading about him, he's been compared with the likes of Luka Modric and Paul Scholes for his ability to kind of attack and defend all in one go. Played pre-season in a 3-4-3 for Norwich, in that kind of middle position on the pitch with wing-backs flanking him and Rob. Now, if he's going to play there, which it looks like he will, and it's of course what he did for Chelsea in this FA Cup, and it did for Scotland against England in the Euros, we could see some interesting stats there for possession, for tackles, that sort of thing. And all of that, of course, adds up in potential bonus points, because I'm not convinced that Norwich is going to score a lot of goals next season. They're going to have to try and be solid defensively also. So he could be one that just enables us. I don't think you're going to play him that regularly. I don't think you're necessarily going to want to have him as a first choice pick across your FPL team, but he certainly looks good in terms of a benching option ahead of the new season. Will of course have a point to prove whilst at Norwich too, in terms of his return to Chelsea at the end of this season. And finally, a player then that I really like, Anderson. He was at loan at Fulham last season, has now gone on a permanent move from Lyon to Crystal Palace. It's a 5-year deal, coming into FPL at 4.5 million. Last time around, he made 31 appearances for Fulham, got a goal and an assist, and kept 9 clean sheets in that time. Now, I am going to look at the underlying stats, and we'll talk about those in a minute, but just obviously to note, Fulham had a particularly poor season last time around, and so the underlying stats don't look as good as they potentially should have done for Anderson, because he made such a difference to that defence when he arrived. He's very good in possession. He's very good with the ball at his feet. He's very good at driving out from the back. He's also very good either in a back four or a back three. An incredibly confident player. Exactly the sort of player that I think Vieira is trying, the sort of player that will fit into what Vieira is trying to achieve at Crystal Palace with this more possession play that they are hopefully going to have over the course of the season. Now, for me, I think Anderson is one that we should definitely be keeping an eye on, because not only is he cheap, but he's also a nice rotation option around that 4.5 category of defenders. We can see that he's got potential. Now, when we have a look at the underlying stats then, he made 46 tackles last season. Of those, he won 33 of them, which gave him a win percentage of 71.7%. Made 172 recoveries, which was the third best for Fulham. I think only the keeper and one of the midfielders made more than he did. He was also top for touches for Fulham, as you can see in the stat there, with 2,324. He was also top for passes with 1,958, and of those successful ones, he made 1,593. Created 8 chances for Fulham, so he doesn't lack attacking threat either. Obviously, we talked earlier about the goal and the assist that he registered, but creating 8 chances means that there is some threat there from him going forward. He was tied 6th across the Fulham side, which tells you a lot, for assists last season with the one that he made. So Fulham weren't exactly having the best ever season in the Premier League, and that shows in the stats that they have. But he did get 7 yellow cards in those 31 appearances. So that is something that we should be aware of, because of course yellow cards equals a minus point, and it's going to take stats away from the BPS. So if he does get clean sheets, we're likely to be looking maybe at the 5 rather than the 6. It's also interesting to note that Fulham did not keep a clean sheet in the Premier League until this guy arrived. I think he is exactly what Crystal Palace need defensively. And for us as FPL managers, I think he could be a really nice key person to help us to kind of strengthen our defence. At 4.5, I think there is a lot of scope to have a number of 4.5s. You can have just 2 and have them rotating, but I've seen some squads with 3 or 4 big, cheap defenders and kind of going big on the cheap defenders. So if you want to do that, I don't think there's anything bad in that. I don't know where Bryan just appeared there. He's not in this. He was in the last one. All right, that's it with this one. I'll be back with some more new signings videos as soon as we get some big names joining the Premier League, which will undoubtedly happen between now and August the 13th. If you have enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know which of these guys you think you might invest in from an FPL perspective. Thanks, guys.